Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
I've mentioned from time to time in passing on this podcast that there are people out there that I have been introduced to over the years, and I've been at this a long time. And I can remember many a times racing home to talk to my wife. You know, we all have that special person in our life, and she's that person you kind of confide in. You're all excited. Hey, this happened today. This is great, and you think it's going to change your world, and it doesn't. It's not horrible. It's not that, but it's real neutral. You feel a little bit duped. I don't know. It's kind of like getting to the bottom of the cereal box and the prize isn't there, kind of a thing, sort of a feeling. And then there have been people in my world where I just, I wonder about it. Is it going to be the no prize in the bottom of the cereal box kind of a meaning where there's, it's nothing good, nothing bad, or maybe it's out and out bad. And I have been surprised by those people more often than, probably I've been surprised by those people. I don't know what the ratio is, but I'm amazed at the number of people that I've kind of gone into having conversations with, and you kind of wonder about. One particular I've had on this podcast, Sajjad Hussein, shout out to Sajjad. We haven't spoken in a couple months, but he was somebody that I was like, oh God, I don't know about this guy. And he and I we've butted heads on lots of things. I like Sajjad, but I've wondered about him, but one thing I can say about Sajjad is he's just connected me with some really neat people. And one of them I've got on today. Suzanne Taylor King, and she's a coach, and we're going to kind of get into what she does. But Suzanne and I hit it off from the start. We're kind of kindred spirits. We're out there both slugging away in business, trying to build communities, if you will, and add lots of value to our communities. And I wanted to bring her on just to kick around the notion of networking and just the hard knocks. And I know I do a lot of talking on here of here are some tactical things and whatnot. And those are nice. But this is really kind of going to be, hey, in the trenches, this is what's happening and this is what we see. So, Suzanne, welcome. Finally got you on.
Oh, I'm so excited to have this conversation. And it's really been amazing getting connected with you. And I've met some incredible people because of saying yes to that connection. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, no, it's been great. And, again, we before for our listeners, there's a whole segment that was not recorded that we were talking about before we got on, and it just all kicked off with, "Hey, how's your week going?" And it kind of morphed into this conversation of, "Yeah, this is happening, and you don't know when to say, you can't say yes to everything. You just need to figure out, when you should be saying no, and it's hard to know when you should be saying yes and no, and it's a challenge, right? Let's start out here. Give the listener your story. The 50,000. Your journey. You just didn't show up in the last 2 years, the last year or so since I've met you.
Yeah,
I guess
it's like an overnight success, right?
Yeah.
No, I went to college for science. I became a dental hygienist, and I was a dental hygienist for 20 years. But that whole time, I had this passion for starting businesses. And sometimes it was just an idea. For example, I had an idea in, 1992 to bring the California surf skateboard shop to New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And I there was no internet or social media back then either. So getting items that were cool and trendy from California and bringing them here, it took off like crazy. And I was still a dental hygienist at the time. no marketing ability, no business skills. And it just kicked off something in me like, oh, my ideas could have legs. Like, this is really cool. And that just started me on a journey of, well, starting numerous businesses for numerous different boyfriends.
Mm.
But I got smart by the third one and actually had shares and stock in the company. And that company is still very, very successful today, almost 30 years later. So this passion, I decided when my son was born, he's now 15. When he was born, I wanted to be home. And what does that look like? And I thought, after a conversation with my parents, they told me about sharing your knowledge, like all these things that you've learned, whether it's fitness, nutrition, exercise, business, start sharing more, start helping other people. And that's what I did. And it was very organic. At first, I was teaching fitness classes at a gym part-time. You don't make money doing that, just FYI. It was for fun and for accountability. And I started coaching people. My clients walked in the door, they approached me, and it was just very, very effortless. And then I started making it official with a coaching certification or 2 or 3 or 4 as I found my
Right.
way.
Always be learning, right?
Always be learning. Yes,
Yeah.
obviously. Lots of books in the background. We have that
Yeah.
in common.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. No, I think that's a great point, that we all have things that, there's always somebody coming up behind us. There's always people there to learn. And I think there are people who get it out there and what expertise do I have? Geez, I don't know. You got 30 some years of whatever, assuming they're just 30 years old, you have a track record, you've done things, and there are people out there who are willing to pay you. At what point did you realize this whole networking thing? Because I mean, I'll be honest, I was probably 32 years old before I realized, oh my God, it's not what I know. I wasted
I
all
think
this.
I had a spark when I left dental hygiene, and one of my patients, who was a cardiac surgeon, he was my last patient at night, my 8 p.m. patient every 6 months. And we had things in common. He was a cyclist. I was a cyclist. He was really into nutrition. He had this huge practice. And one night he was late to his appointment, and I waited. And because he was in surgery, and I knew that. And he got to the office and he said, "Thank you so much for waiting." And I said, "Well, I knew you were on your way." Like, he would never stand me up.
Right.
And we had this conversation about special people to you, right? Like, he was one of my special patients. We had a great relationship. And when I told him I was leaving the field, "Well, what are you doing?" And I told him, I said, "I'm taking these wellness programs I've designed in the dental field, and I'm taking them to other dental offices, and I'm taking them into the legal field." And he said, "I want you to come talk to my staff." And that turned into a corporate, basically, engagement for me. I had no idea what I was doing. But because of my relationship with him, he brought me in to talk to 8 other doctors that he was partnered with and his staff. And I was nervous as heck, but it was because of my relationship with him. And that's when I said, all right, I have to leverage these relationships that I've made over the years. And how do I do that? I had no idea. So I started reading and I started learning. And I think I prefer to get an introduction to somebody or a referral from somebody rather than me meeting random people and going into the close or going into the, aggressive sales techniques. And that has been confirmed over and over and over again for me as I've tried to learn from other gurus and coaches who wanted me to be more aggressive and more, close somebody on the first conversation and sign them up. And I don't like that approach.
Right.
I would rather have a relationship with somebody and provide value to them and have them say, holy crap, Sue, you have skyrocketed what I'm doing. How do I work with you? What is it like to work with you? I take that all day long over talking somebody into working with me.
Yeah.
So it came out of need, really.
Yeah. Well, that's what I've noticed about you is that you aren't pitchy. You just
No.
provide a lot of that. I mean, obviously you have to close people, right? At some point, it's like, are you going to do business with me or not?
Mhm.
Right? It's kind of like marriage, right? We can't keep dating, right? It's going to go somewhere. It's not going to go somewhere. We got to commit.
Right.
But it's not the first date that conversation's happening. But with what I've noticed about you is you are providing value. You're providing value. You're putting it out there, and you're almost inviting people to ask, well, what else is there? You said it earlier. What would it be like to work with you?
Mhm.
I love these calls you do. I love the insight you put out, the different things that you do, what it would be like if I had you all to myself, or
Yeah.
maybe with a smaller group. And so they're really kind of putting themselves in a position where, again, when I say close, I don't mean a hard close, but just, well, this is what it looks like.
Mhm.
And if you want to take the next step, I need you to complete this. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. And I will say, two of my clients right now, best stories ever about one of my clients is a realtor locally here in New Jersey. He was my patient at the dental office. He's been working with me for 3 years now. And most likely, I don't want to be overconfident, but we have a relationship that is full of trust and admiration for each other, but also vulnerability, and that was built when I was a dental hygienist. And when it was time for him to hire a coach outside of the real estate field, because he wanted more success than that was delivering for him, he immediately called me. And I didn't know if I was the person for him. I said, let's meet for coffee at our favorite Starbucks and let's really talk about what you want to achieve with a coach. And I may or may not be the person for you, but I'm sure I know who is if I'm not.
yeah.
And that level of security in what I do and the willingness to refer him to somebody else, I
it's disarming is what it is. I
yes,
mean,
yes.
that you can just, you sense when that wall comes down. Well, when it comes up, right?
Mhm.
But you just sense when it comes down, and people are
Yeah.
realize that they can, well, they can trust you. That's what really, that's the simple way to put it.
Mhm. But that has to be authentic. You
It
can't
does.
fake that. Um, I was referred to a woman a couple of months ago who had her whole everything I do from IP extraction to developing a course and a program, a signature like all the things that are my favorite things to do with clients. She already had in place.
Mhm.
And she said something to me. She said, I need the confidence and the energy to project, out into the world what I have. And I thought to myself, she needs my mentor. She doesn't need me.
Mhm.
Now, could I do that same thing for her that my mentor did with me? Yes. But in reality, I don't do that work.
Yeah.
And referring her to a mentor within 20 minutes of their first conversation, she hired my mentor. And that's the power of a really good referral and a really good introduction. that you're borrowing, and I learned that from Daniel Andrews, you're borrowing my trust. My trust in my mentor, she got to borrow, so that relationship was sped up, and she was working with her within 20 minutes.
Now, and I would have some people who would question, why in the world would you do that? Why would you give up money?
Oh, well, I don't see it that way. I see
Well, I
it
don't either, but I want to hear your answer to this.
okay, so I have learned to stay in my lane of genius.
Yeah.
And that is, a really narrow place in the realm of business. Productivity, habits, your personal well-being, and extracting your intellectual property and turning it into something, crafting offers, that kind of stuff. Well, if you have all of that already, could I mentor you in your personal energy? Absolutely. But why learn something secondhand? Why not, go to my mentor and get the benefits that I've had for the past 2 years of being mentored by Dr. Dorothy Martin Neville, who 8-time author, energy medicine doctor, nothing to do with business, but everything to do with business.
Right.
And when I made that introduction, I think it comes from a place of I'm not in lack. So my mindset is, by referring this client to my mentor, and there's been many others, but this one was a sure thing. This was, you need to work with Dr. Dorothy. I'm not the coach for you. And that feeling is knowing that that's not removing money from my bank account at all. It's actually adding to my credibility as a human, as a business owner, and my relationship with that person that I referred and my mentor has now gone up a notch because I did that.
Yeah, no, it kind of plays into what we were talking about before we hit record, knowing when to say yes and knowing when to say no. And I look at that as, yes, there's trust being borrowed, but there's trust being built because you have a mentor now, and I've met Dorothy. Thank you, Sajad. Your mentor looks at you as when something comes across her desk that belongs to you, she's going to return that. And the person you sent off is going to be saying, you know what? I don't know if she can help you, but I think you need to talk to Suzanne because she'll sort it out. And if she can, she'll do a great job. If she can't, she'll find the person who can. Yeah. So by that one simple move, you really position yourself well to pick up things, and those things don't go away, right? I mean, those are everlasting. No,
and that I've realized something from doing that enough times that it's kind of a superpower for me to have an overhead view of somebody's business and say, okay, well, you're missing this piece, and this piece. I do this one piece of what you're missing, but you need this person before me, this person after me, or during, and that's a superpower. Well, I didn't know that until I was able to not be every client's for me, every person's for me. And I notice so often in the networking space, there's a fear around. I've actually had somebody say that they didn't want to introduce their clients to me, or didn't want to put me on their client's radar because of fear of their clients leaving them and hiring me. And I thought, oh my God, so much work to do. Because the mindset of, I think it's almost like when I refer somebody, I don't see it as me losing. I see it as somebody else gaining, or I see it as me sharing knowledge that I have. Still, referring another person is sharing knowledge that I have. And that goes out into the universe. And this is going to sound a little woo-woo, but that's okay. It goes out into the universe, and it's not necessarily going to come directly back from that person.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's going to come back to you.
Yeah. To me, it's not woo woo. And
Okay.
I had this conversation with my wife this morning, because, she lives in the corporate realm, right? You show up and every 2 weeks you get a paycheck, and, you're told what to do. And I'm not maligning that at all. I mean, we need that for the world go around. But you and I have to wake up every day, and we have to decide, okay, this is what's most important to do.
Yeah.
These are the people we need to talk to, and this is where we need to say no, and this is where we need to say yes. And there is a lot to the saying that it's lonely at the top, and you are at the top of your organization, as am I.
A little bit.
And yeah. And so, we kind of need that. We need people to be filling our cups as much as we're filling others. So
yeah. And I think that comes from your really close inner circle, those people, 5-10 people that you spend the most time with, that you text or you ask questions or they ask you questions.
Right.
People who I consider peers might not be at exactly the same level of business as me, but mindset wise, they're in the same spot as me. And, my husband is an engineer, works for Dell, gets a paycheck every week, works towards the next level, getting, each level comes with more money, better benefits, whatever. And my levels are determined by me.
Right.
Which it's almost harder because I have really high standards for myself. Where when I was in corporate, when I was in dentistry, I didn't have that. It was go to work, do your job.
Yeah.
Another patient every hour. But I can look back now and say 40 hours a week for 10 years, 30 hours a week for 10 years. I had a new person to build a relationship with every hour. What good practice for what I do now.
Yeah.
And I never connected the two until I was in this really high level mastermind with Tony Robbins. And we had to put in the chat and I had never been on Zoom before. And I had to put in the chat what I did for a living before I was a coach. And I put dental hygienist. And I watched him reading the chat. And he's like, who was the dental hygienist? And I was like, oh, shit. Oh, my God. And he said, you are perfectly poised to build a network of people that feel connected to you, that trust you, because that's what you did for a living for 20 years.
Yeah.
And it shifted my perspective in what I was doing.
Yeah, I think that happens to a lot of people. Yeah, it happens to a lot of people. They don't equate their past life with what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And they're connected. They are totally connected. Well, let's shift gears here. I want to give you the opportunity to talk about all the things you've got going on and how people can help you and how you can help people and how they can help you. Certainly how they can get a hold of you. I know I've got website information here, but anyhow, go please.
All right. So mainly people find me through my community. It's called the Idea Lab for Entrepreneurs. And I had a really big vision a couple years ago to pull all the experts I know, like, and trust, networking groups I love, speakers that I love, authors that I love, and share them with other people in a bigger way. And it started in a Facebook group, and now I have a content membership. There's a free version, a $10 a month version, and a soon to be $3,000 a year version.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to make the information that I've learned over the last 35 years as an entrepreneur more accessible, because I saw a trend with this high ticket business coaching. High ticket. You got to get high ticket clients. But the high ticket information was not any different than what I could go to Alex Hormozi's site and get for free.
Right.
And I wanted more people to know all of the options out there to learn and grow your business. And I wanted it to be in a more concise, easy to find way. And I look at it as value for my followers, for the people on my list. You can show up and get free value, or you can commit to $10 a month and skyrocket the value.
Right.
$125 a month gets you actual calls with me every month. And that group just kicked off about 2 months ago. And it's been really exciting because I haven't run a group outside of my private mastermind in a long time. So it's been really fun.
Now, to get a hold of you, SuzanneTaylorKing.com/resources, or
yes, that's all my free resources,
okay.
Which there's a couple actual coaching offers on that page.
Okay.
Which actual coaching programs that I had run in the past that
right.
actually come via email, and they're free, and it'll give you a little insight into working with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had such a great response from email coaching over the years. When I was a health coach, I had a 3, 6, and a 9-month health coaching program that went out via email. And so many positive outcomes from that program, people that would print the emails and put them in a binder because there was recipes and meal plans and all that stuff. But here's what it taught me, that it doesn't have to be anything fancy. If you're sharing from here and you're sharing from here, it doesn't have to be a $1,000 a month platform that people log into. It doesn't have to be, a course delivery thing. And it doesn't have to be a $10,000 coaching program for people to take away massive value.
Sounds great. I really appreciate having you on. I appreciate our connection, our friendship. Let's see where this networking adventure takes us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.